In the fall of 2019, America was shocked by a criminal case that surprised even experienced detectives. At its center was Chad Daybell, an ordinary man from the provincial town of Rexburg, Idaho. Born on August 11, 1968, he grew up in a traditional Mormon family and for a long time lived a life that everyone around considered exemplary. Chad received his education at Brigham Young University, a prestigious institution closely connected with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was there that he developed his literary abilities, which later became the foundation of his professional activity. For many years, Daybell worked as an editor and publisher at a small publishing house, Spring Creek Book Company, which primarily published religious literature for the Mormon community. Over time, Chad himself took up the pen. His works had a rather specific theme: apocalyptic novels that described the end of the world through the lens of Mormon teachings. A series of books called Standing in Holy Places, which included works such as The Great Gathering, The Celestial City, and The Rise of Zion, found its admirers among people who shared his religious views. No one then could have predicted that these books would become a chilling reflection of their author's future extremist beliefs. In 1990, Chad married Tammy Douglas. The couple raised 5 children and settled in Salem, a small town in Fremont County, Idaho. From the outside, their family seemed exemplary. Chad was actively involved in the local Mormon community, where he even held the position of bishop. Tammy worked as a school librarian, loved by both colleagues and students. She also helped her husband in publishing matters, editing texts, and resolving organizational issues. In 2018, Chad's life took a sharp turn when he met Lori Vallow at a Preparing a People conference in St. George, Utah. This meeting proved fateful for both. Lori was an attractive woman from Arizona, married to Charles Vallow. She had 2 children, 16-year-old daughter Tylee Ryan from a previous marriage and 7-year-old son Joshua, JJ, Vallow, whom she and her husband had adopted. At the conference, Chad and Lori immediately found common ground. They were united by a fascination with apocalyptic prophecies and non-traditional religious teachings. Despite both being married, romantic feelings quickly flared between them. They began actively communicating by phone and email, exchanging thoughts about the end of the world, spiritual abilities, and the special mission that, as it seemed to them, they had to fulfill together. This meeting and subsequent relationship set off a tragic chain of events. Chad's beliefs regarding the apocalypse and supernatural phenomena gradually became more radical, especially after getting to know Lori, who not only shared but also amplified these ideas. Together they created their own belief system, around which a small group of followers gathered. Many later characterized this association as a cult. Chad's life, which previously seemed almost flawless, began to take on dark shades. He became more withdrawn, mysterious, spending much time on the phone talking with Lori. Tammy noticed changes in her husband's behavior and shared her concerns with family and friends. According to those close to her, she felt that something was wrong with their marriage, although she couldn't exactly determine what the problem was. In October 2018, less than a year after meeting Chad, Lori and her children moved from Arizona to the town of Rexburg in Idaho, settling just a few miles from the Daybells' home. She explained this move as a desire to be closer to the college where her daughter Tylee was studying. However, as the investigation later established, the real reason was her desire to be near Chad. Please subscribe to my channel, and I will bring you more videos featuring the most shocking true crime stories. Meanwhile, Lori's own personal life was also filled with dramatic events. In July 2019, her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, was shot by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. He claimed that he acted in self-defense. This death raised suspicions but at that time did not lead to a serious investigation against Lori or her brother. After meeting Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell's religious views underwent radical changes. An ordinary interest in apocalyptic scenarios within Mormon teaching transformed into a dangerous obsession that led to the creation of a kind of cult. Even before meeting Lori, Daybell claimed to have experienced clinical death in his youth. According to him, during this experience, he received a divine revelation and a special gift to see the spiritual world. This episode became the foundation for his role as a self-proclaimed prophet. From 2015, Daybell began actively spreading theories about the end of the world at conferences and in podcasts. He particularly emphasized the idea of 144,000 chosen ones from the Book of Revelation, claiming that he had a mission to gather these people who would survive the apocalypse. At the Preparing a People conference, he met Lori Vallow, who had her own extremist views. She considered herself a spiritual warrior and a reincarnation of an ancient goddess, called to fight against dark forces. Together, they created a dangerous belief system that combined elements of Mormon theology with their own radical ideas. According to investigative materials, they believed they were married in past lives and had a special mission to help Jesus prepare for the second coming, which was supposed to happen on July 22, 2020. One of the most disturbing concepts of the couple became the theory about light and dark spirits, as well as about zombies. According to their beliefs, some people were possessed by dark spirits, turning into the living dead. They claimed they could identify such individuals by changes in eye color and energy. The most dangerous aspect of this theory was the belief that to free such a person's soul, it was necessary to destroy their body. In private correspondence, which later became evidence in the case, Chad and Lori discussed people from their circle whom they considered zombies. Among them were Lori's children, Tylee and JJ, as well as Chad's first wife, Tammy. In one letter, sent in October 2019, Chad wrote about Tylee, "I received confirmation that she has a spirit named Violetta, and she has been resisting for a long time." A small circle of followers formed around the couple, mainly members of the Mormon Church who were seeking deeper spiritual knowledge. Lori's brother, Alex Cox, played a special role, becoming the guardian and executor of their will. As the investigation established, it was he who not only shot Lori's husband, Charles Vallow, but was also involved in the murders of Tylee, JJ, and possibly Tammy Daybell. There was also a financial motivation in the formation of the couple's beliefs. After Charles Vallow's death, Lori received a significant insurance payout. Similarly, Daybell became the beneficiary of Tammy's insurance policy worth $430,000. Gradually, their beliefs became increasingly paranoid. They believed that the world was filled with zombies who wanted to hinder their mission. In September 2019, Lori told friends that her children had become zombies, and the only way to save their souls was to free them from their physical bodies. This concerned some people in her circle, but no one took decisive action to protect the children. By the end of 2019, the couple's apocalyptic fantasies had reached their peak. They were convinced that the end of the world was near, and they needed to accelerate their sacred mission. It was then that they moved from theories to terrible actions that led to the deaths of innocent people. Thus, ordinary religious views transformed into a dangerous ideology that justified horrible crimes. Distorted theology, paranoia, and a false sense of messianic purpose created a deadly combination that had tragic consequences for everyone who found themselves in the path of the self-proclaimed prophets of the end of the world. The fall of 2019 marked the beginning of horrifying events in the case of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. It was then that Lori's children disappeared without a trace, and soon after, Chad's first wife, Tammy Daybell, died under mysterious circumstances. These seemingly separate tragedies later turned out to be parts of a single criminal plan. 16-year-old Tylee Ryan, Lori's daughter, was a strong and independent girl. She moved to Idaho with her mother and brother in early September 2019. Tylee was last seen alive on September 8 in a park, where she was with her mother and uncle Alex Cox. Surveillance cameras recorded Alex taking her home that same day, after which the girl disappeared. Tylee's younger brother, 7-year-old Joshua, whom everyone called JJ, was a boy with autism. Despite his special needs, all who knew him described him as a cheerful and kind child. JJ was last seen on September 23, 2019, at school. The next day, Lori informed the school administration that she was transferring her son to homeschooling. No one has seen the boy since. When relatives and friends began asking about the children, Lori gave various contradictory explanations. To some, she said that Tylee was studying in another state, to others, that her daughter was visiting relatives. Regarding JJ, she claimed that she had sent him to friends in Arizona or to his grandmother. Melanie Gibb, a close friend of Lori, became an important witness in the case. In October 2019, when Melanie inquired about JJ's whereabouts, Lori lied that the boy was staying with Melanie herself in Arizona. This falsehood later became significant evidence against Vallow. Meanwhile, on October 19, 2019, when the children had already disappeared but the public was not yet alarmed, another tragedy occurred. Tammy Daybell, Chad's first wife, died in her own home. Initially, her death did not raise suspicions. Chad reported that he found his wife unconscious in the morning. Paramedics who arrived at the scene pronounced her dead, and considering Tammy's health problems and the absence of visible signs of violence, determined the cause of death as natural factors. However, there were details that raised concerns. 10 days before her death, Tammy told relatives that she had been attacked by an unknown masked person who tried to spray something in her face. The woman managed to fight back and escape, but she did not report it to the police, considering it merely hooliganism. Later, the investigation determined that this attack was part of Chad and Lori's plan. 2 weeks after Tammy's death, on November 5, 2019, Chad and Lori married in Hawaii. The ceremony took place on a beach, where the couple exchanged vows and expensive rings. Notably, there were no children at the wedding, neither Chad's 5 children nor Lori's children, whose fate was already unknown at that time. It was the hasty marriage, the disappearance of the children, and the suspicious circumstances of Tammy's death that attracted the attention of law enforcement. JJ's grandmother, Kay Woodcock, concerned that she had not been able to contact her grandson for several months, approached the Rexburg police on November 26, 2019, requesting them to check if the child was all right. When police officers arrived at Lori's residence, they found neither her nor the children. Neighbors reported that the couple had suddenly left a few weeks earlier without explaining why. As it turned out, Lori and Chad had moved to Hawaii, leaving most of their belongings behind. The disappearance of the children and the couple's sudden flight forced the police to begin a serious investigation. Law enforcement released photographs of the missing children and asked the public to help in the search. The FBI soon joined the case. The investigation took on a new dimension when investigators discovered a connection between the disappearance of the children, the death of Tammy Daybell, and the murder of Lori's former husband, Charles Vallow, in July 2019. All these events, which were previously considered separately, began to form a single horrifying picture. In December 2019, when the case attracted media and public attention, the police obtained permission to exhume Tammy's body. A repeated examination determined that the woman had not died from natural causes but from strangulation. While the investigation was ongoing, Chad and Lori lived in Hawaii, showing no concern for the fate of the missing children. They rented a house on the island of Kauai, went to the beach, and shopped. Lori wore a new wedding ring and used insurance payments received after her former husband's death. The couple's carefree life outraged the public. Particularly shocking was the fact that Lori was not worried about her missing children. When journalists in Hawaii asked her about the whereabouts of Tylee and JJ, she merely brushed them off. "Do I look like a mother who killed her children?" In January 2020, Idaho authorities set a deadline for Lori. She had to present the children within 5 days or face punishment. When the deadline passed and the children did not appear, on February 20, 2020, Lori was arrested in Hawaii for failing to comply with a court order and obstructing the investigation. Chad was not arrested at that time because charges had not yet been filed against him. He remained in Hawaii and regularly visited his wife in prison. However, investigators were already gathering evidence of his complicity. In May 2020, the case took on even more gruesome outlines. Alex Cox, Lori's brother, likely involved in the children's disappearance and the attack on Tammy, suddenly died in December 2019. An examination determined a natural cause of death, a blood clot in the lungs. However, the timing and circumstances of his death raised additional suspicions. By mid-2020, the investigation faced a series of mysterious deaths and disappearances connected to the Daybell couple. The disappearances of Tylee and JJ, the death of Tammy, the murder of Charles Vallow, and the death of Alex Cox, all these events gradually formed a single picture of serial murders motivated by distorted religious beliefs and greed. While Lori awaited extradition to Idaho, investigators continued searching for the missing children. However, increasingly more evidence pointed to the worst scenario: Tylee and JJ would not be found alive. On June 9, 2020, the case of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow reached its tragic climax. That day, law enforcement officers with a search warrant arrived at Daybell's house in Salem, Idaho. Armed with ground-penetrating radar and special equipment, detectives thoroughly searched the backyard of the property. What the investigators found shocked the entire country. In the backyard, in shallow graves, they discovered the remains of two children. First, they found the body of JJ Vallow, wrapped in black plastic and bound with duct tape. A few hours after this, they uncovered another horrific evidence of crime: burnt human remains, which were later identified as the body of Tylee Ryan. Forensic experts established chilling details of the children's deaths. JJ died from suffocation with a plastic bag and duct tape. Tylee's remains were so mutilated and burned that determining the exact cause of death proved difficult, but experts confidently stated the violent nature of the murder. That same day, police arrested Chad Daybell near his house. Initially, he was charged with destroying and concealing evidence, which was later supplemented with first-degree murder charges for Tylee, JJ, and his first wife Tammy Daybell. The investigation gained momentum. Investigators paid special attention to the geolocation data from Alex Cox's mobile phone, Lori's brother. According to GPS data, on September 9, 2019, the day after Tylee's last appearance, Cox's phone was on Daybell's property for 2 hours, exactly in the place where the girl's remains were later found. A similar situation occurred on September 23, 2019, on the day of JJ's disappearance. Cox's phone was again detected in Daybell's yard. Email correspondence, messages, and conversation records revealed a horrifying picture of the couple's apocalyptic beliefs, their obsession with the idea of zombies, and discussions of light ratings of various people, including Lori's children and Chad's former wife. In one message shortly before Tylee's disappearance, Chad referred to her as a dark spirit that needed liberation. Financial documents added important details to the crime mosaic. Lori continued to receive Social Security payments for JJ after his death, without reporting the boy's disappearance. Chad, for his part, received an insurance payout of $430,000 after Tammy's death, part of which he spent on his new life with Lori. Melanie Gibb, Lori's former friend, played a key role in the investigation. She recounted how Lori called her children zombies and spoke about the need to free their souls. Melanie also confirmed that Lori had deceived her about JJ's whereabouts, claiming that the boy was with her in Arizona. Investigators found a connection between Tammy Daybell's death and the couple's plans. Several weeks before Tammy's death, Chad searched the internet for information about insurance payouts in case of his wife's death. He also purchased a ring for Lori a week before Tammy's death, indicating a premeditated murder. The exhumation of Tammy's body and a re-examination revealed signs of violent death, most likely strangulation. The incident with the masked attacker, which Tammy reported 10 days before her death, was likely an unsuccessful attempt on her life, organized by Chad and Alex Cox. Special attention was drawn to a text message that Chad sent to Lori on September 9, 2019, after Tylee's disappearance: "I burned a limb and buried it in the backyard." Investigators interpreted this as a coded message that he had disposed of the girl's body, using the word limb as a code name. Daybell's neighbors confirmed that they saw unusual activity in his yard in the fall of 2019, including bonfires burning late into the night. One neighbor said that on the day of JJ's disappearance, he saw Alex Cox transporting some bags on a wheelbarrow around the property. A striking detail was that on the day of Tammy Daybell's funeral, October 22, 2019, Chad and Lori were already in Hawaii, choosing rings for their future wedding. This circumstance vividly demonstrated the couple's cynicism and indifference to the lives of those close to them. Investigators also determined the role of Alex Cox, who died in December 2019. Although he did not live to see the arrests, evidence pointed to his direct involvement in the murders. Geolocation data, eyewitness testimonies, and analysis of communications led to the conclusion that Cox acted as the executor of Chad and Lori's criminal intentions. By the summer of 2020, the Fremont County Prosecutor's Office had gathered sufficient evidence to charge Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow with first-degree murder of all three victims. They were also charged with conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and crimes against children. This investigation proved extremely complex due to the number of victims, the geographical dispersion of the crimes, and the convoluted motive that combined distorted religious beliefs with ordinary greed. For law enforcement, this was not just an investigation of a series of murders, but an immersion into the horrifying world of a cult built on apocalyptic fantasies. The public finally received answers to questions that had troubled them for almost a year: what happened to Lori's children and why Tammy Daybell died. The answers turned out to be even more horrifying than one could imagine. The children were killed by their own mother and her lover because of distorted religious beliefs and the desire to remove obstacles to their new life. After nearly 4 years of preparation and legal maneuvering, in April 2024, Chad Daybell's trial finally began in Ada County, Idaho. The case was transferred from Fremont County, where the murders took place, due to the impossibility of assembling an unbiased jury. The publicity in the local community was too extensive. The prosecution, led by Prosecutor Lindsay Blake and Special Prosecutor Rob Wood, presented a powerful body of evidence. Chad Daybell was charged with the first-degree murder of his wife Tammy Daybell, as well as 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old Joshua, JJ, Vallow, the children of his second wife Lori Vallow. Additionally, he was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. The prosecution's strategy was built on three main directions. First, prosecutors thoroughly revealed Daybell's unusual religious beliefs, which he shared with Lori Vallow, including the idea that certain people could become zombies when their bodies are possessed by evil spirits. According to these beliefs, the only way to free a person from zombie status was to physically kill the body. Second, the prosecution provided evidence that Daybell and Vallow had a romantic relationship even before the deaths of their previous partners, establishing a motive for the murders. Finally, thorough forensic evidence was presented, indicating the violent nature of all three victims' deaths. The trial lasted almost 2 months, during which the jury heard testimony from over 60 witnesses. Among the most significant was the testimony of forensic experts regarding the circumstances of the victims' deaths. Forensic expert Dr. Hart established that Tammy Daybell died from asphyxiation, not from natural causes as Chad initially claimed. This information became crucial, as Daybell refused an autopsy of his first wife's body and rushed her burial after her death in October 2019. Shocking testimony from forensic archaeologists and anthropologists described in detail how the bodies of Tylee and JJ were found in June 2020, buried on Daybell's ranch property in Salem, Idaho. Tylee's body was dismembered, burned, and buried in a shallow grave, while JJ was wrapped in several layers of plastic, bound with duct tape, and buried separately. Testimonies from friends and acquaintances of the couple became extremely important to the case. Particularly significant was the testimony of Melanie Gibb, Lori's former friend, who described how Lori referred to her children as zombies and believed they needed to be freed. Audio recordings were also presented in which Daybell and Vallow discussed their apocalyptic beliefs and light and darkness ratings for people around them. Investigators provided electronic evidence, including text messages between Daybell and Vallow that revealed their romantic relationship before Tammy's death, as well as financial records showing that Daybell received insurance payouts after his wife's death and quickly used part of these funds to purchase an engagement ring for Lori. After nearly 8 weeks of trial, on May 28, 2024, the case was handed over to the jury for a verdict. The jurors needed less than 8 hours of deliberation to reach a unanimous decision. Chad Daybell was found guilty on all counts, 3 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, and 2 counts of insurance fraud. The verdict triggered an emotional reaction from the victims' relatives present in the courtroom. Colin Reichert, Tylee's grandfather, and Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother, were visibly moved when the verdict was announced. Lori Vallow, who had already been convicted of murdering her children a year earlier and received a life sentence, was not present at the trial. Daybell himself remained outwardly impassive during the verdict announcement, although his defenders, John Pryor and Jim Arcabato, appeared disappointed with the outcome. The defense built their strategy around the thesis that, despite Daybell's unusual beliefs, there was insufficient direct evidence linking him to the actual murders. After Daybell was found guilty, the court moved to the sentencing phase. The prosecution demanded the harshest punishment, the death penalty, arguing the particularly cruel nature of the crimes committed against defenseless victims, including a young child. On June 1, 2024, Judge Stephen Boyce announced the sentence, the death penalty for each of the 3 murders. These crimes are among the most shocking and heartless that this court has ever faced, noted Judge Boyce during the sentencing. Particularly disturbing is the fact that these actions were motivated by distorted religious beliefs and financial gain. Before the sentence was announced, the court heard emotional statements from the victims' relatives. Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother, addressed Daybell directly, "You took away our most precious treasure, our grandson, whose life was just beginning. His smile, his hugs, his innocent joy, you took all of that away forever." Emma Murray, Tammy Daybell's daughter, also delivered a moving speech, "My mom was a light to everyone who knew her. She didn't deserve such a cruel fate from the person to whom she gave her heart and with whom she lived most of her life." After sentencing, Chad Daybell was transferred to death row at Idaho's maximum security prison, where he is now awaiting the automatic appeals process, which is standard procedure for all death penalty cases. This verdict made Daybell one of approximately 10 inmates awaiting execution in Idaho, a state where the last execution occurred in 2012. According to Idaho law, the death penalty is carried out by lethal injection, and the appeals process can take years or even decades before the sentence is carried out. The verdict for Chad Daybell brought a certain sense of closure to the victims' families, although the pain of loss remained irreparable. J.J. Vallow's grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, who tirelessly fought for justice, expressed a bitter truth: "Justice has been served, but our grandson will forever remain 7 years old." For Tylee's brother, Colby Ryan, and his wife Kyla, the process was particularly painful. Colby not only lost his sister but also witnessed how his mother, Lori Vallow, fell under the influence of radical beliefs. "I feel relief that justice has been done, but it doesn't bring real healing. My sister was a bright, talented young woman," he shared after the verdict. Tammy Daybell's children found themselves in the most difficult situation. They lost their mother and were forced to reconsider everything they knew about their father. Emma Murray, Tammy's daughter, established a support foundation for children who have lost parents to violent crimes. "The hardest part was realizing that the person we knew as a loving father was capable of such horrible acts," she confessed. The small town of Salem, Idaho, where the murders took place, experienced collective trauma. "We all knew Chad as a respected person, an author, funeral home director, active church member," said local resident Jane Kowalski. "The thought that such a person is capable of such horrible crimes undermined our trust in one another." In the fall of 2023, the house in Salem where the children's bodies were found was demolished. This became a symbolic act for the community, an attempt to erase physical reminders of the tragedy. Many local residents gathered to pay tribute to the victims. The land plot remains empty, with proposals to create a memorial garden there. The case of Chad Daybell remains a painful reminder of how charismatic individuals can manipulate others' beliefs with the darkest intentions, and of the price paid by innocent victims. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you think about this case. If you enjoy deep dives into true crime, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, friends.